Welcome to the Maria Heller Show, the internet's original podcast. Since the year 2000, always ahead of the curve, always on your side. A true warrior for truth and justice, Maria and her guests leave nothing out, and no one is off limits. There is only one truth, the rest is lies. Sit back, enjoy the education with a true daughter of Mother Earth. Sharp New York wit, spiritual knowing, and a very dry sense of humor, Maria will dissect the news and lies to make it all palatable. Education is power. Maria delivers rapid-fire truth like no one else can. Here she is, the mouth that roars, the legendary Maria Heller. Good morning, world. Maria here, alive and kicking, and welcome to Stars Are Us, the astrology for the month of September, with my excellent co-host, Joe Anthony. If you're not familiar with Joe's work, get over to planetswithin.com. I have a live link right here. Just click on through. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Good morning, Maria. Good morning. Interesting times we live in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I got to tell you, the astrology for August was probably the worst astrology I've seen in a long time. And I don't know anyone that wasn't affected by it. Physically, Mercury retrograde-wise, emotionally. I mean, it's a roller coaster. And then, of course, we see Hurricane Harvey and what it's doing to Texas.
Absolutely. Well, what's so interesting is I've had a couple of clients who were in desperate panic mode over their lives falling apart. And this is what this energy is doing to certain people that don't understand what's happening, and they're grasping at straws. And so the energy is very intense. Yes, I mean, we're still in Mercury retrograde as we do this program. So if we have technical issues, we can blame it on that.
Right.
but you know, with two powerful eclipses like we had, and then, of course, Mercury causing more confusion, and then going into Virgo as well, which also can cause confusion because we tend to overanalyze. So as we start this month of September, we are basically, once again, overanalyzing every aspect of our lives, because that's what Virgo energy does, you see. And so, yes, I think we'll see some more chaos in terms of people and situations. And I don't say that out of great joy. I say that because people are just not aware of who they are and what's happening to them, and they're kind of like losing their marbles in a sense.
Right. So I wanted to ask you, do you think that the eclipse that came through the country was somehow connected to this hurricane?
Well, that's hard to say. I can't see an astrological connection, but then again, that's not my specialty. And there are people in astrology that focus on weather and astrology. Okay, and so you know, we'd have to ask one of those astrologers. But all I could say, from my perspective, is because of the two eclipses, one being in Aquarius, which is the disruptor, the one that causes all kinds of electrical issues and energetic issues of all kinds, and of course the solar eclipse in Leo, which has a lot to do with energy and photon light and so on. It might have had something to do with it, but, you know, you and I and many of your listeners and my listeners know that the technology exists to play God with weather.
Right.
And so, you know, I can't say, and I've seen some videos, and they look pretty convincing that this hurricane might have had, you know, human imprint, or a footprint on it, or a handprint on it.
Right. Well, I've seen some of them too, and even when I post them, I just tell people, make up your own mind.
Right.
Because you're always going to get people, going to get people that argue and whatnot. And I just think that everybody needs to look it up. And if they look at the videos, if it makes sense to them, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, but this has so many reminders, so many similarities between Katrina. And I believe that Katrina was totally created and then steered, but missteered. I don't feel like they have the right technology yet to steer these things exactly the way they want. But like I said the other day on the show, it's going to take several days before we can even think about who benefited.
Sure. Sure. Well, the thing, ever since Jade Helm, okay, remember that a few years ago? That Jade Helm stuff that was implemented in the Southwest?
Right.
From Florida all the way to Arizona and parts of California and Utah.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
That got my suspicions really high. Okay, the radar was going off the charts when that was going on. Because why are they targeting the South and the Southwest? Because these states are the biggest threats to some sort of uproar. I mean, there's tons of guns down here. There are people who are more awake. Mm-hmm. You got your so-called right-wing conspiracy people, but you've also got people that are awake and know what the hell's really going on. And so, I think they're targeting the bottom half of the country because of that reason. Now, whether Harvey was or was not an orchestrated hurricane, we'll see. Only time will tell. But if we start seeing weather patterns in the next few months, and I'm going to say once again, watch October and November. These are going to be very critical months astrologically to watch because they are associated with the eclipse that we just had on the 21st. In other words, every new moon that occurs after the eclipse affects that eclipse in the past. So let's say, the third month, which is October, that is a 90-degree angle to the eclipse, which means there's the greatest chance of some sort of disruption happening within that time frame. Does that make sense, Maria?
Well, yeah, but if it's going to be worse than what we're seeing with Harvey, I would say that we're in for a pretty wild ride.
Well, as I've been saying all along, I think a lot of this, this sort of doom and gloom that a lot of people talk about is going to be weather related. And whether it's man-made steered hurricanes or it's a solar flare, a massive solar flare that takes out power in, parts of the country. Because that's already actually happened, but nobody's ever talked about it. Where there was a massive solar flare or an EMP of some sort and it took out power. And so I think that is the biggest threat to humanity, and especially the U.S., because the rest of the world could handle not being with power for days, weeks at a time. But the U.S., we're so accustomed to our technology and our computers and this and that, that if something devastating happened, we'd be lost.
Right, absolutely. Well, I could see it in my own town. When we lose power for a couple of hours, everybody goes into a panic. Right.
So we're entering a month now where weather can be an issue. Virgo is an earth sign. Virgo is a very nervous energy earth sign. And so this is the time of the year where we have seasonal changes as well. So there could be the possibility of extreme temperatures, like a drop 30 degrees overnight, which we've seen already. Right. So I'd say keep an eye on the weather and see what happens, because that's how I think it's going to affect the United States the most. Now, that's not to say that the other shoe's not going to drop with the economy,
right.
Especially when Jupiter goes into Scorpio, and that is October the 10th. So we astrologers are going, okay, let's see when this happens. We're looking at all these patterns, and all we could do is guess, our best guess on where and what time it's going to happen.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it was either last month or the month before on our show that you said that, these would be weather events. And unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure you said it would have to do with water.
Yes. Well, and that is correct. I have been saying it for the longest time. As a matter of fact, it goes all the way back to my presentation on 2009 in front of an audience where I said Neptune going into Pisces, you're going to see all kinds of strange and unusual weather patterns involving water. So this is a continuation from then, because Pisces represents water, and the ancient myth behind that sign is Poseidon, the god of water. So here we have all kinds of issues with water and weather. And so we'll continue to see these. These are not going to go away anytime soon. And especially when you consider whatever this photon light is that's coming in, that's disrupting the Earth's magnetic fields. This seems to be, as I've said before, a higher frequency And I can just tell you, Maria, there are days where the energy is so heavy, just the last few days, where at around, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I feel like taking a nap, and there's no reason for that.
I know, and I actually took a nap 2 days ago. It was like 2 o'clock, and I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. And I just laid down. I mean, and then some days you just feel tingly. Some days you feel normal. Some days you feel like your whole body hurts. I mean, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm referring to. And that has I don't say it has very little to do with the astrology. It has something to do with astrology. But I think it has more to do with this photon light or these waves that are coming in, as Carl Kalaman talks about, the ninth wave.
Right.
They come in cycles. And we're affected by it every so many days because they're shorter waves, as he talks about, 36 days, 18 to 36 days.
Right.
And then boom, the next wave comes in. So that's what we're experiencing, these waves.
Well, I notice a lot of people are angry, a lot of people are confused. And then when I explain to them the astrology for the month, especially remind them about Mercury, then they say, aha, now it makes sense. And I could just watch them relax right in front of my eyes, because sometimes knowing is enough to make you less angry.
Absolutely. Well, this is the month where we go through Virgo. Now, God bless you Virgos out there, but Virgo is associated with a lot of negativity and pessimism, because the modus operandi of a Virgo is to analyze everything until it's perfect. Right. That includes relationships, that includes their bodies, that includes their jobs, that includes, the way they look, everything. And so this month, the sun's already going through Virgo, so we have a lot more high nervous energy because the nervous system is ruled by Virgo. We have short fuses too, Maria. People are just at a moment's notice just getting upset. And I see this.
Right, I'm seeing it too.
Critical thinking. Virgos love to overanalyze everything. The overanalyzing doesn't stop with Virgos. If they're not overanalyzing someone else or a situation, then they tend to go inside and start overanalyzing their own lives. My life is crap. It's not going anywhere. My relationship sucks. They start to kind of beat themselves up a little bit. Again, striving for this need for perfection. And feeling irritated is another aspect because the nervous system is in high alert. They may not be eating properly because, the nerves are going, the stomach issues are going, and feeling more irritated is usually common under the energy of Virgo. Mm-hmm. And so this month, we're going to have quite a few planets in Virgo by the middle of the month. And so there's going to be also a tendency for obsessive compulsive behavior. Obsessing about perfection. It's got to be perfect. Oh, no, that doesn't look right. Oh, no, this hair is out of place. Oh, no, I've got to analyze this and do that. So the energy is a bit nerve-wracking, not to mention it's already higher from the eclipses and the photon light coming in.
Right.
And so it's a real tricky month, Maria. I'll be honest with you. It's a real tricky month.
Well, let me ask you this before we even get into it any deeper. Is it going to be better or worse than August?
I think it'll be about on par with August because this month will be more nervous energy. Like last month with all that Leo energy, there's always a tendency to smile more or have a few laughs. Right. And, be more playful under Leo aspects. As we start this month, we still have a few planets in Leo. Okay, so, the first week of September, we may be feeling still okay and nothing to be too concerned about. But once everything starts going into Virgo, and we'll cover that in a minute, Mars and then Venus and then Mercury and then the new moon. Now you're talking about pure Virgo energy by the middle of the month. You see? So I think it's going to be, the middle of the month is going to be more irritating, to be honest with you. And my suggestion, get your behinds into the gym or get yourself somewhere where you can exert some physical energy. Right. So you don't keep it all bottled up in your head and in your nervous system.
Right. Well, I think on the 5th, if my memory serves me right, isn't that when Mercury goes direct?
No, Mercury will go direct on the 9th. On the 5th, Mars goes into Virgo. So Mars going into Virgo amps up the energy even more. Mars is an already combative planet. It's looking for challenges. It likes friction. It likes to be motivated. And then, so when it enters, Mars enters Virgo, it just amplifies Virgo's energy even more. So you got fire and earth, and this is a period of tremendous energy. And in my newsletter, when it says, albeit sometimes nervous and unsettling energy. So pay attention to your body during this transit.
Okay, so let me ask you this: with Mars entering Virgo, I'm sure you know that North Korea fired off a couple more missiles, shot one over Japan after giving them a warning to take cover. Do you think that the United States will retaliate during that period? Could it be war?
It's very possible, but this is what I got intuitively. I get a feel for what's going on with North Korea. This is it's very tricky. North Korea is a very tricky wild card. On the one hand, the Rothschilds, we know, own basically Japan and the banks of Japan. We've had Japan under our thumb, or not our thumb, but, along with the United States for so many years since World War II. North Korea has also been sort of infiltrated by the bankers and Rothschilds. And I think what this is the Rothschilds twisting some arms and saying, hey, we need you to do us a favor and start lobbing some missiles over here. Remember, these bankers and these crazy bastards that run the world want chaos. And so they're using North Korea, another boogeyman, just like it was Libya, it was Iraq, it was, all these other countries ahead of before them.
Right.
So I get a sense that they're being used, or they're being forced, or they're being asked to do some dirty work for the bankers and the Rothschilds and the same psychos that run the planet. Okay? That's just my take on it, my personal opinion, my feel on it.
Right.
I don't think I'm too far off, though.
Right. Well, you never know. You know what I mean? It's like we always have to take a look-see. Let's look and see what happens.
But here's the other thing, Maria. I think you know this, but 2 drones were taken down in Turkey within like 4 days. 2 American drones. Now, that's kind of unheard of, don't you think?
I would think so. I saw those articles too. There's a
I mean,
lot of
kinda
weird
strange.
stuff. Right, a lot of weird stuff happening, that's for sure. So
that makes
you see
makes
that.
me wonder.
I know. I've seen, even the one that Israel tried to send off, where that was blown from the top down. And of course, I'm thinking about those UFOs over Phoenix last month.
That's right.
So
maybe there is some help.
Maybe man, we could use all the help we can get. You say we have a full moon in Pisces, like the day after Mars goes into Virgo. How does that affect the Mars thing?
Well, the interesting part about this one is there'll be an opposition, even though it'll be close. It'll be close opposition. But with this Pisces moon in particular, it's going to be very closely aligned to Neptune, which is associated with sort of a cresting point, or culminating in an ending, or finishing up something, a completion cycle, a realization cycle, whatever you want to call it. And it's basically asking us, because it's opposing the Sun and Mars. Mars also represents the self, and so does the Sun in many cases. It's asking us to create boundaries for ourselves, to weed out the sort of toxic people, places, things in our lives that don't belong there anymore because of the energy that's involved. And again, last month's eclipses is like a kind of a reset button. And so we're going to be asked this month to change our habits, to get rid of people that are annoying, to perfect ourselves, our minds, our bodies, and change behavior, toxic behavior that's not doing anything for us. whether it's relationships or just cleaning up our diets or, taking practical action. On the positive side, Virgo is all about health and eating healthier and organic and taking better care of our physical bodies. Mm-hmm. And that means the spirit as well. So this full moon, because it's in Pisces, it involves the spirit. It's a spiritual sort of cleansing. Get rid of what's not working.
Right.
And I'm seeing relationships falling apart. Friends and clients, same thing.
I know. I keep telling people this is not the month to start an argument with your partner.
Right.
This is not a month to quit your job. I have seen people do such crazy things, buy new vehicles and then lose the keys. Okay? Mm-hmm. And then have to go crazy to try to find a locksmith who can make a key. I keep telling people this is not the time for anything new. Joe, I didn't even want to call my plumber to change my RO filters until this retrograde's over. And now that I know it's the 9th, I might have to reschedule him.
Well, the retrograde affects more of the electronics, but I know what you mean because it's a time of confusion as well, retro, going back,
right.
Thinking about everything. And so the focus is not there. Now, the positive side of this month, Maria, is because we're going to have all this Virgo energy, Virgos are very good at detailed work. And so focusing on work that involves precision and accuracy and perfecting something is definitely a plus this month, if that's what you do or that's what you're going to focus your attention on. So I would definitely suggest working on something, yes, after the Mercury retrograde, so you have a little bit more clarity.
Right. I have one person, her car was broken into, then her car windshield was smashed. At the same time, she lost her phone. It went on and on. She couldn't move forward to save her life. Mm-hmm. And I think that for a lot of people, that seemed to be the biggest commonality in August is everybody felt like they couldn't move forward.
Right, exactly. And what happens is when you don't know where you're going and you can't move forward, you tend to do things that make you feel happy and joyful. Some people like to spend money, overeat, go back to something that is very well known and brings them joy. But getting back to that retrograde, I have a couple of friends who are good mechanics up here in Sedona, and my one friend said he has never seen so many cars with electronic computer issues before. And I said, well, I've been trying to tell you there's all kinds of crazy energy coming in, and then this month we had Mercury retrograde. Of course you're going to see this kind of stuff.
Right, exactly. It's the time to lay low. I tell people, lay low. Years ago, I used to think like everybody else, this is all BS, but I tell them, hey, I've been clocking these things now for 35 years, and they never cease to fail. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like bingo every time. But, once you understand, it makes it a little more palatable.
Right. You don't take it as personal, like, oh, my God, my life is falling apart. And this is what I hear. No, think outside the box. Think bigger.
Right.
Energy is moving. It's never stagnant.
Right.
So
that's
what we have now.
Right. Where does Leo fit into all this in September?
Well, for Leos, when the planets start moving into Virgo, for Leos, it has a lot to do with their value system and it has a lot to do with their finances. Uh-huh. So this is one of the best times for Leos because of that cycle and that solar eclipse. This is like a turning point for all Leos over the next 6 months to a year. So this month in particular, many of them will be focusing on their finances, their investments, new businesses, reinventing themselves. In other words, their belief system. What is it that I really want? What do I want to get rid of? And so that is a big deal for Leos this month, is to perfect themselves and move on and, to better opportunities. And it's going to be a great time for Leos. So if you're a Leo rising, even a Leo moon, you'll be affected greatly over the next 6 months.
Good for Leos. That's what I say.
Right.
Right. Now, Virgo, is it Virgo that was in retrograde or, Mercury's retrograde? I'm getting a little confused. But you say on September 9th, Mercury will return to Virgo after it was retrograde. So.
Yeah, because right now as we're doing this, it's still in Leo. And so it's retrograded back for just a short period of time. I think it's in like 29 degrees. Actually, let me pull up my chart here. Mercury is in Virgo, and then it drops back quickly into Leo, and then on the 9th, it starts moving forward again, and then it jumps right back into Virgo. Does that make sense? It actually goes direct. Let me look here. See what the retrograde's doing, Maria?
Don't worry about it.
It goes direct on the 5th, and you were correct earlier when you said that. Mercury does go direct in Leo on the 5th, and then a few days later it goes on the 9th, it goes into Virgo. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah. And so, because I've got a bunch of windows open on my screen here, and so I'm looking at all the information that I, put in the newsletter, and so that's what's actually happening. And of course, it doesn't help that Mercury's retrograde right now.
Right. Well, that's for sure. The other day, my power blew out. I was in the middle of a phone call, and it blew out. And it only blew out for about a minute, but it was enough to blow everything out and have to restart everything. And I was like, oh, this month is never going to end.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And now on the 19th, Venus joins Virgo. Since most people see Venus as the planet of love, would you say that's going to affect relationships and maybe not in a good way?
Yeah, exactly. Venus wants romance and wants things to be fair and even, and Virgo wants to analyze everything to death. So this is usually a time where arguments incur, between friends, between lovers, between, business partners and stuff like that. Oh, you're not doing that right. Or no, you're always doing that. And that's when, that nervous energy kicks in and, we start analyzing every aspect of the relationships. And so we focus a lot of our attention on being critical rather than appreciating. But there's also an upside to all this.
That is, really? What? What is it?
Well, people go to counseling during Venus under Virgo. They tend to want to tinker under the hood, so to speak, of the relationship to figure out what's wrong. And so they'll go to a counselor, preferably an astrologer, but who's also a certified counselor, to come to some sort of realization why their relationship is changing, or why their values are changing, and why they're so nitpicky and irritable. But it's not the greatest time for relationships. No, I would say.
Right.
Sorry to say, folks.
Right. So you duct tape your mouths and move away from each other for the month, or get down and dirty. Right. Now, one thing I noticed was interesting. It didn't look like anything superb astrologically is going to happen on September 11th.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Maria. I don't see anything there, but every time you look at the clock, it seems to say 111 or 911 or 333. I mean, it's like our consciousness is being drawn to that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I see 911. Even in numbers when I'm looking at a paper, 911, and I think it's a time, it's a doorway, these numbers are high vibration numbers. The 11 is a master number. And so the other thing that I have been seeing a lot of is tetrahedrons, a lot of geometry. And so what I'm seeing is that we have an energy that's changing and it's trying to reveal itself. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so we've got 9/11 is a turning point because of the towers coming down and remembering that moment. But I think 9/11 in general has a greater frequency purpose, and this is why these dark ones chose 9/11 to take down the buildings and cause the chaos, because it's such a high vibration number. And so for us, especially those of us that are awake, we must use 9/11 as a reminder of spirituality, sending more love into the world, not just thinking about that devastating day where the dark ones, decided to imprint the planet. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, one thing I have to say, watching what's happened in Texas and what's still happening, and it's an amazing thing to me because all of a sudden, the state that's been rated #1 racist state in the country with some of the craziest laws you've ever seen is united. Nobody's asking, are you a Muslim, are you gay, are you, this and that, while the rescues are going on. So in a way, it's like the hurricane united people better than the president could.
Well, I've always said this, and I knew this because this is the information I received, that the changes that were going to be implemented in the long term, whatever that means, 15, 20 years, and I said this in 2009 in a presentation, I said, these changes at first may seem that they're devastating and confusing and angry and things falling apart. But in the long run, it's going to bring everyone together and there's going to be a lot more love in the world. And so what I think we're seeing is that dynamic playing itself out every time there's a disaster. Every time there's a natural disaster or shooting or whatever it is, the best in people seems to come out because that's our natural that's our natural spirit coming through.
Right, separate of all the programming and fear, the same old vicious people the news keeps showing us, instead of showing us they're the minority, they just keep whipping up the fear and the division. But when you see something terrible like this happen, no one has to tell anybody what the right thing to do is. There's always a few that are, I'm going to say mentally challenged, that, going to get violent or lewd or whatever. But the majority of people know innately what to do. When I was a kid, Joe, and people would talk about going to church or religion, to learn about God so they could be good people. And I always felt that you're born knowing good and bad. That's natural. It's like you're born knowing there's an energy greater than yourself. Nobody has to teach you that. Listen, sometimes these kind of disasters bring out the best in the people, not the government or politicians, but the people. Look how many churches wouldn't even open their doors to these people. I mean, It's pathetic, and they claim to be, doing God's work.
Yeah.
So maybe these people will wake up, and stop giving these people all their money, so they could live mega $1 million lives when they're all phony Christians. But, the real Christians are the ones you see swimming out to help somebody, regardless of their color, their sexuality, or anything else.
Exactly.
And, in a way, that's a really good thing to take away from a very horrific situation, without question. Joe, we need to take a short break. I don't mean to cut you off, but stay with us. Okay. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Maria Heller. If you're enjoying this show, please consider listening to the rest of it, along with hundreds of other hours of education, by a small subscription on my site. Get over to meria.net, meria.net. You are the only thing that supports this show. There's no corporate control, and there's plenty of education on site. So please consider either a subscription or a donation to keep the work going. There are too many alternative voices out there that are being silenced because of lack of support. So if you don't want MSM to be the only mind-controlling news out there, please consider supporting the people that support you and help us all save something for the future for our children. Thank you so much.